can have a huge impact. And from what Paul Merson said yesterday about gambling addiction, to what Nicki Minaj said about the vaccine, is quite a leap, let me tell you. She tweeted, "My cousin in Trinidad won't get the vaccine because his friend got it and became impotent. His testicles became swollen. His friend was weeks away from getting married. Now the girl called off the wedding, so just pray on it and make sure you're comfortable with your decision, not bullied."
What an idiot.
And we had an extraordinary moment yesterday in the press conference where the Chief Medical Officer, Chris Whitty, was asked about Nicki Minaj's tweet.
There are also people who go around trying to discourage other people from taking a vaccine which could be life-saving or prevent them from having life-changing injuries to themselves. And many of those people, I regret to say, I think know that they are peddling untruths, but they still do it. In my view, they should be ashamed.
Well, she's absolutely unabashed and unashamed. This was her response pretty soon afterwards.
Professor Whitty,
She gives an impersonation of a very, very posh English accent. Here we go.
Yes, hello, Prime Minister Boris. It's Nicki Minaj. I was just calling to tell you that I thought you were so amazing on the news this morning. And I'm actually British. I was born there. I went to university there. I went to Oxford. I went to school with Margaret Thatcher. And she told me so many nice things about you. I'd love to send you my portfolio of my work, since you don't know much about me. I'm a big star in the United States.
She has absolutely no comprehension. She's got 22 million followers, and she has no comprehension that ridiculous tweet actually does do real damage.
Well, Dr. Hillary, I mean, the trouble is, if you include the words vaccine and impotent in a tweet to 22 million people, what impact is that going to have?
Yeah, a damaging impact. I mean, I can think of many reasons why a young man might develop swollen bits and call off his marriage, and having COVID-19 vaccination is not one of them, ever. It potentially does huge damage. People look at those two things together and they say, "Oh, I'm not having it." And she's later said that no one understood my sarcasm and sense of humour. But it isn't funny.
No.
Actually, it's very damaging and dangerous.
And we've seen too many people, haven't we, who unfortunately have suffered and lost their lives, and particularly high-profile people over in the States who've spread an anti-vaccine message.
There's so much disinformation and misinformation, and there's a big job to do to counteract that. Got 5.5 million people in this country who still haven't been vaccinated who are eligible, and they are part of the problem, because we've seen the number of cases rising all the time. Schools going back and businesses going back. We're going to see more cases, and if that translates to hospitalisations, we're going to be in trouble, which is why we're talking about plan A and plan B.
Just before we do that, you're still a practising GP, you still see patients in your surgery. Obviously, there must be some coming in saying to you, is it true that the vaccine does this, does that? What are the common myths that you're having to kind of torpedo in your surgery?
I think fertility is one. Should I be worried about future fertility? And the answer is no. There's no evidence whatsoever that fertility is affected, and there's no hypothetical reason why it would be. And with all the millions of doses that have been given now over a long period of time, there haven't been any reported cases of proven infertility. So that's one. Another one is that it can affect you in all sorts of ways. That it can actually give you an illness. That it can cause all sorts of problems. But fertility is the main one. That it hasn't been researched well enough. That it's new technology. And it's relatively new technology, but not in terms of, we've used this against MERS and SARS, we've used it against Zika, Ebola.
It does seem, even as you're saying it, it seems extraordinary that we're still
there.
Having to debunk these myths. But when someone with that sort of following makes a statement like that, it's going to make people concerned about vaccines.
Yeah, I don't think they have any idea of the potential damage they cause. I mean, presumably it's an attempt at humour. But A, it's not very funny, and secondly, potentially hugely damaging.
We're joined as ever by the Mayor's Kevin Maguire and the Mayor's Andrew Pierce. Do you think that we should find some way of cancelling her?
Well, I don't know how you can.
No, neither do I.
You would just like to ignore her. She talks about sarcasm and humour. Well, you can't support it. What, my brother's friend what, a passerby who spoke to somebody in a cafe who'd been in a restaurant that was on a beach. I mean, come on,
For some people, that's all they need to hear.
I know.
I mean, you know, when we're talking about jabs now for 12 to 15-year-olds, Nicki Minaj is a massive star amongst teenagers.
Yeah.
What she says actually carries some weight. So thank goodness the Chief Medical Officer of England debunked what she said.
And that was, and I think that would have been very carefully thought through, because they'd have known that question might come. They'd have wanted that question to come.
Yeah.
And Chris Whitty's not a man who likes to pick fights. He doesn't want to be controversial, but he got stuck in and well and truly. Because you can imagine now a 13-year-old, this conversation with mum and dad about, shall I have the jab? No, mum, because I'm not.
Nicki Minaj told me not to.
Exactly.
Everybody makes mistakes. You'd like Nicki Minaj to say, look, it was an attempt at humour, bad joke, go and get your jab.
Yeah, I think it was a calculated
I agree
attempt
with
to
you.
get global publicity, and that's what she's got.
Yeah.
It's worked.
Eyes on screen.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have the vaccine programme as one of the central planks of Plan A.
Yeah.
The trouble is, there is also a Plan B, and I think a lot of people are concerned that Plan B might become the main plan. I mean, what do you think?
It feels like it's heading that way, with these SAGE experts saying that hospitalisations, 1,000 a day now, could go up to between 2,000 and 7,000 a day. People going into hospital, to be followed by a rise in deaths, unless relatively easy measures aren't taken, including COVID passports, wearing masks more commonly in public areas, and encouraging working from home again. I don't think we're going to go into a lockdown. The government is resisting that, but you don't want the Prime Minister to let bodies pile high again. I think it was 186 deaths yesterday. That's 2.5 dreadful towers. I mean, people are still dying in large numbers, but we're almost looking the other way and pretending it's not happening.
Most of those deaths are from people who haven't had the double jab.
Yeah.
We were talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, the vast majority of the deaths are with people who've not had 2 jabs. They may have had 1, but they haven't had them both, which tells you something.
It does, but the other thing, I can't see why we can't just say, let's go back to this mask policy. So I use the tube a lot. I would say now half the people on the tube are wearing masks.
Right.
Now, the mayor has said you've got to wear a mask, but half the staff aren't wearing masks either. So why will people wear? It's so easy to wear one. It's considerate. It's thoughtful.
Yeah, but I put this to Therese Coffey. Sorry, I put this to Therese Coffey the other day, because if you're on the tube and Transport for London will tell you there is a regular change of air on a tube train, but you're watching MPs in the House of Commons and they're not wearing masks. People are going to think, well, hang on a moment, they're the ones who make the laws and they're not wearing masks. Why should I? Sorry, Doctor.
I was going to say, in the European countries where they're still using those mitigation factors, wearing masks, their rate is actually better than ours at the moment.
Right.
I mean, it won't take much to get us into a crisis situation with 7,000 admissions a day. Can you imagine 7,000 admissions a day? The NHS would be overwhelmed. Ambulances would be outside trying to treat patients in ambulances, and people with cancer and heart disease would not be able to be seen. That would be a crisis that we could expect.
What you're saying is the trigger point for Plan B?
That would be about before then, hopefully, because we want to avoid that. So we'll look at cases, we'll look at hospitalisations. The R rate currently is 1, which means that the infection rate is neither growing nor diminishing.
Stable.
Right, but if it goes up to 1.5, if 10 people give 15 people the infection, hospitalisations will be 6,000 a day.
How high was it at its worst, the R rate?
I'm trying to remember. I think it was approaching 2.
Okay. Can I ask you about the booster? Obviously, we're placing all of our faith in the vaccine now. That was clear yesterday. We're going to all be getting the booster at some point. But I think you and I both had the AstraZeneca jab.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be giving us an AstraZeneca booster. Now, that made me kind of flinch a bit, and I thought, well, is that because there is something wrong with it?
Not at all.
Blood clots?
No, not at all. I mean, it would be absolutely fine to have the AstraZeneca booster. No problem with it at all.
Why aren't we getting it?
It's just that they feel that the Pfizer is preferable, better tolerated, and slightly better in trials in the effect of the booster.
So this isn't a retreat from
not at all.
a dangerous
No.
jab?
In fact, they've done trials on mix and matching vaccines, so you could have Pfizer after AstraZeneca after Pfizer. It would still be effective.
Right.
It's just that they prefer the Pfizer. That's the one they're suggesting, or Moderna, which is used in a half dose.
And you were saying yesterday here, it was very interesting, that the booster jab isn't necessarily just going to give you another 6 months of coverage. The third jab, in the cases of vaccines, quite often gives you an extended degree of coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. You're ticketing up your antibodies, your T cells, your B cells, your immunity memory, if you like. so that a further exposure to the real virus would
Right.
produce many more antibodies and give you effective immunity for longer.
Sorry, just to establish, it's not going to be given to everyone, is it? It's going to be given to
Initially,
those...
Initially to the priority groups that we had before 6 months previously. So the elderly, the very elderly first, coming down in age, but also the clinically vulnerable. And of course, we've got the scheme now for children 12 to 15.
Given that Boris had just lost his mother yesterday, I was quite surprised to see him.
I thought
What
he would do it.
This performance.
It's so important. It's so important that the Prime Minister puts his stamp of authority on it. I thought he was very subdued, though.
Yeah, I
I'd say.
thought so too.
And I think he could probably would have preferred to be anywhere else, but because he was incredibly close to his mum. But I think he was right to do it. But he was very subdued.
Andrew, it's interesting. Yesterday, before the programme, I went in to talk to you to ask about Michael Gove.
Oh yes, who?
Because Michael Gove has been sort of present by his absence.
Yeah.
And on the front of the Times this morning, it's because he has a new job. He is in charge of saving Christmas.
Yes, he's not exactly going to wear his Santa Claus outfit or get on with the reindeers, but there's a problem with HGV lorries and deliveries of food. Christmas was a write-off last year, if you remember. Everything was about we were going to have Christmas. They cancelled it at the last minute. Prime Minister's determined that's not going to happen this time. So Michael Gove is in charge of ensuring that shops, supermarket shelves are not empty at Christmas. So you get your mince pies. So they're going to change all sorts of rules now to enable us to get more HGV lorry drivers.
Do you think he's having a midlife crisis? I mean, I wasn't on the show the week that those incredible pictures and videos
in Aberdeen,
at the rave in Aberdeen. Do you think he's in the middle of a midlife crisis?
Well, he's getting divorced, so that's going to divert him and shake him up, isn't it? And he's said to be bored in his job.
He's going to get a new one.
He's now sort of Britain's most famous clubber.
But a lot of people were very tolerant about it, and they were kind of more amused than anything else. I must say that when I saw those pictures, I think we have a problem here. This is a very senior member of the cabinet, and he's out raving at 3 in the morning with people he's never met before.
That's not a problem.
Am I being stuffy and old-fashioned?
Yeah. And I think
I think people actually liked him more because of it.
By the way, just in case no one's seen them.
I think people liked him more because of it. They thought he was a human being because he danced so badly, but he was having such good fun in that nightclub.
But isn't he exposing himself to potential danger?
He's letting his hair down. He's letting his hair down.
He came to no danger, did he? Up in Aberdeen, where he was visiting his parents.
The dance floor was in danger because he can't dance.
You can't miss that one of the reasons there is a lorry driver shortage and there is a crisis and Christmas is threatened and shelves are empty is in part because of Brexit, which Michael Gove backed. Now, yes, COVID's come in. Yes, there's been a problem that lorry drivers have been an aging group. Yeah.
And it was hard to get tests, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they're not paid enough, and their pay's been falling dramatically.
But how much of it, Kevin? Because this is a key question. How much of it is Brexit?
Yeah, it's in truth, it's very difficult to know.
Yeah,
but it is a prominent factor. But whether you say it's half, 3/4, a third, I don't know. I don't think anybody.
So these are the pictures of Michael Gove dancing, either having a midlife crisis according to Richard, or
of course he is.
letting his hair down because he's bored.
That's a midlife crisis.
According to Andrew.
So that's just a man dancing very badly. He's had too much to drink. Have you seen Kevin Maguire in a nightclub? He's exactly the same.
Judge someone else's dancing unless you're on Strictly Come Dancing. I mean, I think that, we're all entitled to look a bit embarrassing in a nightclub.
I don't think on that performance Michael's going to be doing Strictly anytime soon.
Actually, I think he quite likes it though. We talk about that, than rather his huge catastrophic political mistake.
Sarah Vine, his journalist wife, wrote in her column. I expected her to have a little dig at him because obviously they're getting divorced, and she did. But it was quite sort of low-grade ammunition. She said something like that her mother had called her up after those pictures went on YouTube and said, "Darling, that video alone is grounds for divorce."
Yeah. I like her columns, and she also wrote that at least he's not Matt Hancock.
Yes.
Where's he at the moment?
Yes. He's rebuilding his career because he thinks he's making a big return to cabinet anytime soon. Let me tell you, he ain't.
He's training for the London Marathon, where people have been paid £2 plus gift aid to sponsor him so they can slag him off on his website.
Do I feel like we've lost a little respect for our politicians?
Yeah, I think it disappeared a long time ago, actually.
I tell you someone who everybody has respect for, and that is our very own Kate Garraway, of course, and congratulations, because, Kate, you won the NTA Award, the National Television Award, for your absolutely remarkable documentary. finding Derek. That was an emotional night. And then last night you had another emotional night, didn't you?
It was the Health Awards. Yes, I was lucky enough to be asked to present a host award for nurses. How fantastic is that? Can't say who won because it's all going out in Channel 4 and it's such a lovely viewing. I don't want to spoil it for people, but it was extraordinary.
But you were nominated for your extraordinary performances on camera in the most difficult year of your life.
Yeah, this is the Association for International Broadcasting.
Yeah.
Nominated for basically a year of reporting your year of COVID.
Well, actually, I just found out about this morning, so it's really wonderful, and I think I think it's reflecting that sort of double thing of living the COVID pandemic as we all have, and also reporting on it, and it's really, really kind. But it's also actually about this programme, isn't it? It's about all the work everybody's done in bringing coverage of the pandemic. So
has being able to report it, Kate, and talk about it here on the programme, and you make that extraordinary documentary that you won the award for. Do you think that's helped a bit?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I think coming in here and the support from all of you has been amazing, and it's a slice of kind of pre-pandemic normal. It's doing a bit of what you used to do and what your life was a huge part of my life anyway. And then also, I think it's been very helpful actually when talking to politicians and talking to people that have been directly affected in all sorts of different ways, to be able to bring some of what you know to bear on it. I think it does help because people can dismiss other people, but it's like, hang on, I know this. And so, yeah, I think it has been helpful. Not necessarily an asset I would wanted to have had, but, it has been really helpful. Yeah, and thank you to everybody.
You shared a very touching picture of Derek, as you talked to Darcy, your daughter. And you shared the picture because his eyes lit up at the fact that you'd won the award.
Yeah,
and it was really a credit to him, wasn't it? That award as well. That
absolutely. And we are very clear now that he does understand everything really, and understands everything that that I tell him and talk to him about. He can't respond to it as he'd want to, and he can't communicate still, and that must be a desperate battle for him, as it is for so many people that can't get out and can't get out their thoughts into the world.
Can you explain how you know that he understands everything? Obviously, you're right, but how do you know that?
It's a good point, isn't it? So, for instance, we've been in the last week or so Derek's been having lots more tests of things, and one of the first times he's been back to hospital was a couple of weeks ago. And since he came home, first time he'd sort of seen medics out of the home, and it was a very, very long day for him because we've talked about before in this programme, he's sleeping so much, 20 or 24 hours, but he had to be out of bed and albeit flat, but out of the home. And right at the end of that day, they were doing some very basic breathing tests, and they asked him to hold his breath and release his breath really hard in a particular way. And I just thought, wow, he did absolutely everything they asked of him. Obviously he couldn't move and do those things, but every instruction that he could do, he understood. So I know that it's not just me. Also just reactions to things to say and do, you can just see it, and reactions to the children. And his responses are appropriate. I mean, maybe a lot of it's projection, Richard and Zidane, if I'm honest, because I'm hoping it, but it does really, really feel that way, as though he is reacting. And with the award, I was trying to ring home because it's so late, and I didn't get a single picture of myself at the event because it was all such a whirlwind, and I just rang and wanted to tell him. I had to go via Darcy, who didn't want to be woken up, and there was a whole palaver, and she didn't really get the moment at all at that point. I've got school tomorrow, Mum, I've got school tomorrow. But anyway, got him, he was on the, and he was there, and he reacted, and his eyes filled with tears. So I know that he knows, and it's a tribute to him that he wanted to go ahead with the documentary for everyone else.
Absolutely.
Okay, we send our, just hugs and love to Derek and Darcy and Billy. as
I met your
close as
husband
possible.
by the pool in Australia when you were in the jungle.
You had a lot of time together, didn't you?
With drinks for me and Julie.
Yeah.
He was so funny.
Yeah.
It was one of
He's
the funniest
colourful.
conversations I've had. He was very funny about you.
Was he? Oh God! You can tell me what he actually said.
I'll tell you afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, well, congratulations and love to the whole family. We're going to take a break and we'll be back after this.